To the Golden Molehill Awards 2021, live from the Molehill. Well, which is my flat, but you get the idea. If you're new to this, what we're doing here every year is we are honoring the top 5 games in no particular order of that certain year. Then we are talking about a company who has been helping quite a bit to make gaming better. And then we are also talking about the shittiest game of the year and the shittiest company of the year. Afterwards, we are taking a look at the games which are coming out next year and which ones we are looking forward to. Truth to be told, I have looked back at the games I'm looking forward to this year, and none of them made it on the list. Well, that's not entirely true, but man, we got bamboozled this year. And then we're also talking a little bit about streaming, what we have planned from a content creation perspective next year, what I'm doing with my channel, where I want to make changes, what have I learned, what have I not learned, the whole shebang. It's basically our recap of 2021 and trying to look into the future of 2022. Now, as I said, this is live. That means there are people coming in. I'm talking to my chat. There might be some alerts going off. And yeah, if you are like, man, he is not 100% laser focused because I'm streaming this as well. And yeah, that's what we are doing now here for the next 3 to 4 hours. No, we don't have any world premieres. I'm sorry. I asked Jeff Keighley, and he was screaming at me, and he was like, get out of my house at 3 a.m. in the morning. Don't know what his problem is, but he didn't want to give me any world premieres. Don't like it. What can I say? But here we are. And with that said, let's talk about the top 5 games for me of 2021. Those are in release order. They're not like in a ranking like this is the top 1 game, this is the top 2 game. Like, we will talk about the top 5 games I believe you should definitely play, like which are absolutely worth your money, which will give you a good time, and those are the top 5 games. Like, there's no particular order besides of the release dates. With that said, I actually have a game of the year this year. This is my first time I can safely say this was the best game of the year, hands down, because 2021 was a mess. I think we can all agree on this, can we? Like, 2021, I think, was the first year where I'm looking back at it and I'm like, we had good games, but there was nothing really which grabbed my attention besides of maybe one game. Like, everything else was just, yeah, we have seen this before. Yeah, we have been here before. Oh yeah, it's not bad. It's alright. And then we just had tons of like, oh my gosh, how could you release those games? What? It's like 2021, I think, was a good year to see that the gaming industry has to rethink their approach and how they release video games drastically, in my opinion. One of the first things they should absolutely do is they should stop releasing games, or like the big games, all around winter. Like, it's not just because everyone is doing it, and so with that, not everyone can play the games and buy the games, but also it puts a lot of pressure on the developers and the development cycle. And like I said it a little bit earlier, Battlefield 2042 is such a wonderful example of a game. If that would have released a month later or 2 months later, we actually would have had a hit on our hands immediately on release date. But they decided to release it when they released it in November, and it wasn't ready. It wasn't ready at all. It was in a terrible state. Now, if you are playing the game now, it's playable. Like, sure, there are still a few gameplay elements which are not necessarily like what people want it to be, but from a pure performance and gameplay perspective, the game is now completely playable and is actually quite fun. And it's like, wow. So if you would have released Battlefield in, let's say, mid-December, we probably would have gotten a much, much better product. But no, you wanted it out in November because you will sell more units. I was like, I'm not sure if that was worth it in the end. Especially with the long-term damage they might have done to the franchise. But that is definitely something we will come back to later on. Now, let's go to the top 5 games of 2021. Keep in mind, those are my personal favorites because they're adding something to your gaming experience you're not getting every day. Like, the games have been good right from the beginning. They didn't need 20 patches to work, and they sometimes try to do something different. Yes, number 5. No, first, we are starting right out of the gate with the January releases. And the first game, which I'm still playing today, I have already hundreds of hours in, and I'm planning to sink even more hours into this game. It is Hitman 3. Hitman 3 is just good. Yes, it is very similar to what Hitman 1 and Hitman 2 was. And sure, the story, like they finally finished the story in Hitman 3, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, it's alright. It works as expected. And let's say this game doesn't win the award for the story. But everything else, this game is doing great. The performance is amazing. It looks stunning. Like, even in 2K, it looks really, really good. And it really gives you the feeling of partially like next-gen graphics sometimes. And they haven't even ray tracing implemented yet. That is finally coming next year. And I will be honest, I am not sure if my GPU can handle the ray tracing. Because as I said, the game looks already absolutely stunning even without that. And they even increased the graphics even more in the third game. I don't know how that is possible, especially with all the people on the screen. Like, if you were looking at the NPCs, which are just walking around and standing around, like, they're actually quite detailed. I was like, how are you doing this sometimes with hundreds of people moving and doing things? It's remarkable how this game is running on ultra settings with 2 or even 4K, and you have 60 FPS without any problems. Like, they did a fantastic job on the performance, and it just runs well. When it comes to the gameplay, yes, Hitman 3 is not a reinvention, especially because you can play all the Hitman games in one package. But it adds a lot of cool new mechanics to it. The maps are now much bigger, but not empty. There's always something to do. There are new things you will find in the game. And the maps are so diversified. Like, sometimes you're in a tower, like you can see right here in the background, right? You're like in this tower, which is the biggest building in the world. And then you're on a train, or you are in a vineyard, right? Like, there's so many different aspects to it, which just makes it feel like a world travel game. Like, you are going around the world and you are seeing the world. And it just feels amazing. You have tons of opportunities. You can do your own missions if you so desire. And this game, in my opinion, is doing live service right. You know how live service games are coming out and you have the feeling half of the game is missing? You know? Like half of the game is missing, and then they're patching the rest of the game afterwards. And the live service game is not really to add new content to the game, but to add the missing parts. And Hitman is not doing this. Like Hitman 3 came out as a full package, and now they're adding new maps to it. They're adding new missions to it. And you can do them. You don't have to, though. Like, the story is completely finished, and you get the whole shebang when you are buying the game. If you want to do the DLCs, if you want to do the different missions, that's up to you. That's completely up to you. You don't have to. And they're also adding like new special targets every month. They're adding new weapons, new costumes you can wear. So like, there's not much I have to complain about when it comes to this game. There is one thing, and it's not really a complaint, it's just weird. So at the beginning of Hitman 3, they're introducing you to a new feature. And that new feature is a digital camera. And you can use it, or you have to use it even, to open up like a security lock, right? You have to use this camera to then open up the gates, and then you can enter the first level. And that's the only time when they're doing it. It's like, wait, why did I got the camera? I have the cam now, but I never use it ever again. It's so weird how prominent they are introducing this feature to you, and then they never talk about it ever again. They never utilize it. Like, it's just gone. Yeah, you can still shoot like photos with it, but it's like, why? And keep in mind, it was one of the main features they basically introduced in Hitman 3. It's this, hey, you now have like a special digital camera, you can also hack into the system and all that. I was like, okay, cool, amazing. How often do I use this? Once. Okay. Weird new feature. But Hitman is just a joy. Like, I have now in total over 1,000 hours in Hitman. That is Hitman 1, Hitman 2, and now Hitman 3. And with Hitman 1 being the most played, Hitman 2, the problem was the short budget. Like, keep in mind, that was the time where IO Interactive got kicked out from Square Enix, like literally kicked out. And, well, you know, they had to do with the money they had, and they were running out of money. So they had to finish Hitman 2 as quickly as possible to make some money back. And with Hitman 3, they were back to a budget. They had a budget again. They were like adding a lot of cool new stuff to it, like bigger maps, more targets. Like, they had so much more time to refine what was going on in Hitman 3. So Hitman 2 is definitely the weakest of all the Hitman games, but it's still good. But I enjoy Hitman 1. I think had some amazing maps. Sapienza being the map I played the most. It's such an amazing map. And even Hitman 3 has a lot of stuff going for them. So yeah, if you like to play around in a playground, in a sandbox, you should play Hitman 3. And you can do so much goofy stuff. I think Hitman is amazing how they are trying to be serious, right? Like, everything is serious. You are a hitman, you are an assassin, you are going for the targets, you are murdering them. in the most brutal and efficient way, but nobody has to notice. And it's this super serious game. But the moment you are done with the main stories, Hitman is becoming the most goofiest game I have ever seen in my life. There is so much BS in this game you can utilize. And you can make your own targets, and the community can then release those targets, and you can just play through community maps and community missions. And you have to figure out things. Like, I still remember there is like a map where you have to kill a target by drowning them. The problem is there's no water on that map. And you cannot really like get them to the toilets or anything. And it's like, how do you drown that dude? And they had to do it because if you didn't drown the person when you created the map, the game is like, well, you didn't do it yourself, so why would we give this as a mission? You have to do it yourself first before somebody else can like redo it in the custom mission. So you have to figure out how to do that. And it's like there's so much stuff you can do in this. It's really fantastic. It's a true sandbox game with some rules here and there to guide you. But yeah, it's a full-on sandbox game which can give you hundreds of hours. And they're adding more free stuff to it. Paid stuff and free stuff. So it's a great game. And Hitman 3 had the right to be on my list this year. Now, the next game had also be the right to be on my list. And man, let me tell you, this game, when they first announced it, I was like, dude, yo, that's amazing. Like, you're running around as a kid, you're experiencing other worlds. I love Balan Wonderworld. Like, Balan Wonderworld was just like coming out of the left field, and nobody really saw that coming, and it's just a fantastic game in itself, which I can't do that. No. The game I'm talking about is a game which I'm dreaded, and I was very much afraid of playing it. I had to actually play through it with cheats because I was so afraid of it, and that was Subnautica Below Zero. Subnautica Below Zero is the standalone expansion of Subnautica. And it is fantastic. The story was really cool. Like, especially the ending. Whew. Not spoilers, don't you worry about it. We will not spoiler here. But like, this was a great finale to the Subnautica story. And yes, it's a new character you are playing, and it's completely different. And no, you don't have to play Subnautica before you play this one. You should though, because they are. I think you are missing out on a lot of cues they are pulling in the game, and a lot of things where you will not fully understand what's going on in Below Zero if you have not played the original Subnautica. So that's a thing you should keep in mind. But this game was, interestingly enough, a much better experience than Subnautica was. Why? Because this game was guiding you. It was focusing a bit more on the story, and where Subnautica was closer to a sandbox experience, Subnautica Below Zero was definitely closer to the story aspects of the game, and had a much smaller world because of that, but it was trying to guide you. It was trying to lead you through the game and show you the wonders. Of course, it's a bit unfortunate when you're not like stumbling about the things yourself, but I also sometimes thought that was a problem in Subnautica 1, where you could miss out on things. Or it would take hours and hours before you find it, and you basically had to use a guide to finally find the point you have to go and what you have to do there. Like, especially later on in Subnautica 1, there were like a lot of moments where you didn't really know where to go next and what to do next. Like, the game was not really explaining that to you. And they now did so in Below Zero. They also added like some interesting new features, like you could freeze, right? They added land areas, which I have to say, they were not perfect. You could clearly see that they have basically perfected the water gameplay, but the land gameplay was a bit... They were new to it. Right? And that land part was okay. But they also added a new sea truck, so they removed the U-boat, and they basically like implemented like the sea truck thing where you could take components of your base, so to speak, with you. And that was really cool. Like, you didn't have to go back to your base of operation all the time when you needed something. You could just take that with you in the field. They added also tons of new underwater creatures, good ones and bad ones. And they just didn't copy the monsters from the first game. And again, this is a standalone expansion. This is not a DLC. And they really put a lot of quality into this. There's also now voice acting, like tons of it. Yes, there were the audio logs in the first one, but it was just audio logs. Like, there was no communication with characters. They were not talking to each other. You were the only character in the world in the first one, more or less. And in this one, like, you had to like talk to people. And where in the first one, they were trying to setting the world. They were trying to explain to you what was going on the planet. In this one, they didn't try that. They were focusing on the characters. They were focusing on what was going on here. And again, you appreciate this game so much more when you have played the first Subnautica. They took their time with it. Yes, definitely. Like, they took, 2 years? 2.5 years or something? They said it themselves. They planned to just take a year and then release the game, but they made so many changes. They also completely switched out the story. Like, they completely changed that up. And yeah, it was great. It was great. I really enjoyed it. As I said, I had to play it with cheats so that the monsters don't see me, because for whatever weird reason, I'm not somebody who is afraid of water. In video games and in real life, I love water. Especially in real life, like swimming in the ocean and all that. Sign me up. Like, sign me up. Diving, hell yeah. I'm all for it. I don't fear that. Not at all. But this game, I don't know what it does to me, but my body is like, I'm literally sitting here and sweating, and especially in the first Subnautica, getting panic attacks the whole time, even though there are no monsters there or anything. It's like, Subnautica does something to my body, and I don't know what it is, and I've never had that in my life. Like, Subnautica is the only game in existence who's doing this to me, you know? So, yeah, Subnautica, I had to play through with invisible cheats. I just can't deal with it. It's, oof. But even with that said, it was an amazing game. I can highly recommend it. And if you haven't done it yet, play through the first Subnautica and then play this game. It will reward you so much more. But yeah, there was Subnautica. Below Zero. Now, the next game is maybe something you don't expect it. You know how we take or put a lot of like story-focused games into the list? And we are like, yeah, oh my god, this game was amazing because of all the story and the things they're trying to explain to you. And yeah, the gameplay was good, but the story was really carrying that. And that's fine. You know, story-driven games, I love them. And more of that. But I also wanted to have a game in here which is not story-driven, which is just winning you over by gameplay, and which keeps you playing for hundreds of hours. And that game in question this time is Chivalry 2. Chivalry 2 is an amazing multiplayer game, which, I will be honest, if that game didn't release in summer as it did, or late summer, I think it would have gone a little bit crazy when it comes to video games. Because, man, there were not a lot of games there, and Chivalry 2 is just fantastic. It's absolutely hilarious. It doesn't try to be completely serious. The fighting is very arcadey, but it is not easy. Like, the moment you want to refine how you fight in the game, and you want to get better at it, it can become really in-depth, and you need skill for that. Yes, and not to forget, throw the chickens at the enemy after you behead the chicken, and then yeah, you get the idea. Like, again, this game doesn't try to be serious. It doesn't take itself serious in any kind, shape, or form, and that's also what makes this game great. But then you have those one-on-one fights, right? And it becomes like a really cool dance, and it feels really, really well. Like, again, Chivalry 2 is just an amazing multiplayer game. And I first thought, like, not gonna lie, when I was thinking about this list for the first time, I was actually thinking that this would be the place where I would put Battlefield in. Like, this would be the moment where Battlefield 2042 is getting like the multiplayer category. Well, we all know that that is not the case, and that ain't gonna happen for various reasons. But Chivalry just managed to capture this multiplayer fun. You have your multiple classes, you have tons of new weapons, you have cool and interesting different maps, you have multiple play modes, and it doesn't stop. They added more maps to the game. They added more weapons to the game. They added more play modes to the game. Like right now, there's a Christmas playthrough play mode where you are like on a Christmas banquet and you are just like taking, whoa, that was a ballista, taking all the food which is on the table and try to beat the crap out of each other. It is absolutely hilarious and chaos. And you know what? All those things I've just mentioned, they came in for free. Doesn't cost you another penny. And even when the game came out, like, it was running well, it was playing well, didn't have any big bugs, the servers were holding up, it didn't feel incomplete. Like, even if they didn't, but even if they would have said, okay, you know what, we are done here with the game and we are moving on to the next one, I would say, yeah, okay. There's so much to do here. This is another great example of a fantastic live service game. And good morning to you, Zoe. Welcome in. Like, Chivalry 2 is a game I can completely recommend. Small little note, if you are trying to play this game on PC, it is an Epic Store exclusive. For now, we don't know if that will change. When it comes to Steam, it will definitely increase the amount of players who are playing the game. But they are, like, the servers are still full. Especially because keep in mind that you are playing with Xbox and PlayStation players together. So it has crossplay, and it works really, really great in this game. And yeah, this is one of those multiplayer games where I can just say you will have fun for hours to come, and it is chaos, but it also has the moments where you really are becoming laser focused on the duels. So yeah, absolutely play this game if you are looking for some multiplayer fun, and well, also medieval fighting, not just like modern age shooty pew pew weapons, but actually something different. So Chivalry 2, definitely one of my top 5 games of 2021. Was really happy with it. We will go back to it maybe in January. We will play some Chivalry 2 because we don't have like a lot of games to play in general in that month, and I can highly recommend it. I can highly recommend it. But that was Chivalry 2. Now let me drink something. Oh boy. This one. This game, I said it before, I normally don't do my game of the year, because I think that all top 5 games are worthwhile to play. All the games I'm mentioning of my top 5 games are game of the year games, so to speak. They are the top of the top when it comes to the leaderboard. And that's normally how I do it. This game, though, was so good that, in my opinion, it left the other games in the dust. And where all the games I'm mentioning are really good games, you will get like tons of hours out of them, and you will say afterwards, man, this was a good game. This game is a step above that. And the game I'm talking about is Psychonauts 2. Yes, Psychonauts 2 is a game I didn't expect. And I think that's the amazing part about this. I haven't played Psychonauts 1. I have never played the expansion. And Psychonauts 2 starts where Psychonauts 1 ends. Like, it exactly picks up on it. And I was a little bit afraid that I would miss out on things. That I would just, because I didn't play the first one, I wouldn't understand a lot of cues and a lot of things are happening in the world. But that wasn't the case. Like, the game does such an amazing job to explain everything to you, even as a non-Psychonauts player. It's amazing. Like, the world building is great, the characters are just hilarious, funny, and likable, or, well, not likable, because that's the character. The game looks good. They are using a very interesting art style. The world design is just fantastic. It is so refreshing and different to what we see to other games. Like, how games are always focusing on dystopian destruction, apocalypse feeling, or it's like a big city, or like a fantasy scenario with orcs and elves. And Psychonauts is just like, let's try something different. Let's not try to be another fantasy game, sci-fi game, or something like that. It is so different that when you are going through the multiple worlds, you're like, whoa, this is completely different. Because you are going through the minds of the people, and well, every mind is different. There are tons of collectibles going on, which you can do, you don't have to. If you're not a fan of collectibles, that's fine. You can upgrade your character, you are getting more abilities over time. The story is really cool and interesting, especially the stories of the people you are going into their mind and you are trying to figure out what's wrong with them, and then they have a story of their own going on. And this game is just something special. The voice acting, by the way, is also fantastic. Like, very believable. I think Microsoft has been doing like an amazing job with voice acting games for quite some time, like last year, Wasteland 3. Fantastic voice acting, right? And the same goes with Psychonauts. Like, Psychonauts has this feeling of actual people talking to each other and not just reading from a script. You like, don't get me wrong, there are games out there which have some great voice acting, but you still have the feeling of, yeah, this is not a real conversation. Like, they basically recorded like the two sentences independently of each other and then put them together to make it look like they have a conversation. In Psychonauts 2, you never really get that feeling. There are no awkward pauses in there. There's like, it's just great conversation. So I really enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the gameplay. I loved the worlds. They were so different. And I'm not a big fan of jump and run games. I know this is like an action adventure / platformer, but I'm also not a big fan of those because, frankly speaking, I'm pretty bad at those. I'm really bad at those games. For the love of everything, I can't jump. I'm not the jump guy, you know. I'm miscalculating my jumps, and it becomes pretty tedious and annoying to watch when you are falling off the cliff 20 times, where people are just like, dude, just walk up to it and jump over it. How can you screw this up all the time? Like, I'm one of those people when it comes to those games. And that, even with all that said, this game makes me still love it. It's just amazing. It really is. And so I can only highly recommend this game. Like, some people ask me, is this game worth $60? Especially when it is on Game Pass. And the answer is, well, no. If you have Game Pass, then use Game Pass. You know? just use Game Pass. But I would say yes, if you don't use Game Pass, it is worth that money. It's like a 30 to 40 hour game, depending on what you make out of it. And depending on how much you explore and you try to get the 100%. But it is still absolutely worth that money. Like, why am I bringing this up? Because when I'm looking at Halo Infinite, which is also on Game Pass and costs $60, I have to say I'm not sure if Halo Infinite is worth that money. For some people it will be, totally, but for some people it will not. And it just shows to me, at least, how good Psychonauts really is, when I can even easily say this game is worth $60. Absolutely. If I wouldn't have Game Pass, if I wouldn't have gotten this game from Microsoft directly, I would have bought it. I finished the game, and I can say by the end of it, yes, this would have been absolutely worth my money. And I'm actually thinking about maybe in my vacation time I will play through Psychonauts 2 again. Because I still have to do some percentages in the level and I really enjoyed the game. So, I know Psychonauts is not necessarily the go-to game when you look at it on screenshots or even some trailers, you might think, oh, what is that? That looks a bit weird. Like, okay, jump and run, adventure game. Try it. It's really good. The quality they put into this game and the humor. Oh gosh, the humor. It is so good. Like, the best Double Fine game I have ever played. And keep in mind that this game was mostly, not all of it, by the end they got support from Microsoft, but most of the game was developed under a Kickstarter budget. It was developed as an indie game. And again, they just, even with that budget in mind, they just nailed it. Sure, the quality, the voice acting, probably the bug fixes they could have done and all that, like, Microsoft picked them up and they had more time to refine it. And you can totally see that. Like, it helped the game a great deal. Not denying that. But the gameplay loop itself, the story and all that, it's like, they have all done this with an indie budget. And I'm really curious to see where Double Fine is going from here. With, like, Microsoft giving them the money they need. So again, do yourself a favor and play Psychonauts 2. It is absolutely worth it. Now, if you can count, which, let's be honest, I can't, so I hope you do, we are done. And I totally forgot to do this, by the way, on the stream. Like, the thing is, we have only one game left when it comes to the top 5 games of 2021. And I have to add something. I will mention a few things in this game where you might think, wait, why is this in the list? You know, you might think that. But this game I have not finished. Unfortunately, after over 200 hours in that game, I was losing steam quite a bit. But it is one of the most refined RPG games this year, and I can only recommend Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous. Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous is, as I said, this game which you have the feeling it never ends. Like, as I said, I had 200 hours in this game, and I wasn't really sure, like, when it ends. Like, it was too big. It was too big for me to handle. Giggity. But it is an amazing RPG. It is so good. Like, when you sometimes look at D&D and you think, man, I'm missing a little bit of variety when it comes to D&D. Pathfinder is having that variety. They have, like, 30 different classes, if not even more. I think it was 30 the last time I counted. And even I changed my classes in between the games sometimes because I wanted to test things out. And I started out as an Inquisitor, wasn't really my thing. Then I was not a battle mage. I think it was a what is it called? Something acolyte, where you could use your touch spells and put your touch spells on your weapons. Right, so you would cast a spell, and that spell would go into your sword, and then when you would attack with the sword, it would do the attack with the weapon, but also the spell you casted. That was really cool. Unfortunately, I realized I wasn't really good with it, So I switched to something I didn't even saw coming by the end, and that was the Alchemist. And what the Alchemist is doing is you were just like having those potions, and you were throwing potions at the enemies who do a lot of damage, but you can also drink potions like Witcher style and increase the combat capabilities of your team and yourself. And what you're seeing here, by the way, the person is playing this game in real time. I play this game in turn-based mode. You can totally play this game in turn-based mode. I have played it from the beginning till nearly the end in turn-based mode, and it works. It opens up different play styles. Like it plays differently, and you have to account for different issues. Like you have to calculate things quite differently. So there's its own difficulty when you are playing it in turn-based mode. It's quite interesting. But I enjoyed it. 200 hours in. Is this game voice acted? Yes and no. Yes, parts of it, like the important story parts, when you're meeting new characters, there's voice acting in the game. But especially when it comes to the side quests and just talking to some people, they are not voice acted. So not everything is voice acted. And again, Pathfinder, if you have never heard of it, Pathfinder is built on D&D. They actually started to build Pathfinder with, what was it, 2.5? The 2.5 rule set of D&D. And then they basically made it its own. So they are, like, if you were playing this game and you have ever played D&D, you will be like, whoa, I know this rule set. And then they added a lot of things on top of it. Or 3.5, sorry, 3.5, my bad. Look, I mix up the versions sometimes. I'm bad at those. But yeah, they added their own stuff to it. And the amount of classes they're just giving to you, which are not just your standard mages, warriors, rogues, is just so refreshing. You know, the RPG is very strong in this game. You make a lot of decisions, some which will have positive outcomes, some will have negative outcomes. And then there's the path you have to choose. So at some point in the game, it's all story based, so we will not talk about it too much. You have to choose a path. And I choose the Fae path. So I joined the Fae, and they're basically chaotic good. And that completely changes the game. Like I now have a dragon with me, and that dragon is like a cute little... She's super cute, but also like a bit evil. Like, how do I describe her? Like, I still remember this conversation the dragon once had. Like, somebody was rude to me, and my dragon was stepping forward and was like, "Ah, don't be rude to my friend. He's such a nice guy. And if you say that again, I will eat your eyes out." Whoa, okay, that escalated quickly. it's pretty fantastic. Like also your fortress is basically changing. Like you can also become like a lich or the devil and something like that. Like deciding which path you want to choose changes your game quite dramatically. Like it changes the town you were in, it changes the characters which will follow you, it changes some of the quest, how the main quest will unfold, and it's like some really in-depth changes. Like my buddy of mine who played the game with me is playing as a lich, and well, let's just say his playthrough has been going a tad different than mine. A lot of people dying and coming back as undead and not so happy people. Yeah. Like this game is just if you love RPGs, if you enjoy D&D, this game is the RPG of the year. And Zoe, by the way, I saw that earlier. Why you don't own this game? I'm sorry. I have to admit, they patched the game quite a lot. This seems to be a common theme for Pathfinder games. Like the first month or so, they are pushing out like 20 patches. But, yeah. One last thing. You might ask, do we have to play the first Pathfinder? No. No, you don't. And I will be honest, this game is so much better. I think there's like, 1,000 years or 500 years or something between this and or not 500 or 1,000 years. I think it's 100 years or something. Numbers. There is some distance between them, and they're never overlapping. Like again, if you haven't played the first one, Kingmaker, you don't. And I will be even more honest to you, I didn't like the first one. I played the first one, and after, I think, 12, 15 hours, I was like, nah. Not my type of style. Yeah, the biggest problem is that in the first one, you have some timers on your missions, like some critical timers. And like even some of the side missions were timed, and you always had to plan your time and how much you want to spend on those missions. And you were basically forced to move quickly all the time. And it wasn't great. And in this one, you don't have that, thankfully. Yes, there are some missions when you are like reaching a certain aspect or a certain part in the story and you haven't done that mission yet. That mission will fail. But you know what? I can live with that. That's fine. Right? I know, okay, when I'm doing this main mission now, like the 2 side missions I still have will fail. So I'm just doing the side missions before I do the main mission. It's as simple as that. But yeah, this game, 200 hours, I couldn't finish it because I had the feeling I was halfway through it. And there was so much going on. But it's a fantastic RPG with so many possibilities I have never seen before in an RPG when it comes to choose your class and choose what you want to do. And that gets me excited. That really, really got me excited. So yeah, Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, check it out. I know it did flew under the radar for a lot of people. You can play it in turn-based mode if you want to. You can play it in real-time mode if you want to. You can do both. It's completely acceptable. Keep in mind though, turn-based mode is also probably increasing the playtime quite a bit. Like I'm pretty sure if I would have played the game in real-time mode, I wouldn't have put 200 hours in the game. Like I'm pretty sure of that. So keep that in mind. But that was it. That was the top 5 games of 2021 for me. And if you've missed some, let me tell you them again. We had Hitman 3. Yes, Hitman 3. Below Zero. Well, Subnautica. Below Zero. Chivalry 2. Psychonauts 2. And Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. And Mimi, thank you so much for 1,000 elixir. Holy moly, thank you so much for the support. I do appreciate that. Thank you. That is a lot. Thank you very much for that. Like, thank you. Damn, that's a lot. Like, thank you. But yeah, those were my top 5 games. I will also put them on Twitter when we are done here, so you can see them yourself. And in my opinion, you should play them all. I want to do an honorary mention. I want to do an honorary mention when it comes to games. Yes. There is an honorary mention I want to do for a game which was like really tough. I wasn't sure if I want to mention it or not, because when it came out, it wasn't too great. It had some issues. Balance was not great. Some other things were not as people wanted it to be, and that's why I basically decided not to take it in, because I think I've just reached a point where I want to honor games which come out and they're delivering on the promise. Well, they promised, right? But I came back to this game a few weeks ago and wow. What I'm talking about here is Humankind. The Civilization-esque game, which started out good, but as I said, it had a lot of like balance issues here and there, and a lot of things people wanted in the game wasn't there. But now they have changed this. They released 2 big patches, and the game is now really, really good. One of the first big changes they made, now you don't have a time limit anymore if you so decide to do that. Like before that, there was always a maximum time limit of turns you can do in the game. And yes, when the timer was running out, you could say, don't care, I want to continue. But the game was basically over. Right? Like it would tell you who won. It would tell you who got the most points. And then you could still say, okay, cool, but I want to continue. And people were not happy about that. So now you can deactivate that, and you can also tell the game when the game has to end. Like, do you want to conquer all the other civilizations? Do you want to reach Mars first, colonize Mars? Is that an option you want to do? Or do you want to reach like all the research, or you want to reach like the last era? Like you can now choose when the game ends, or you can just say, nah, this is an endless game now. Just let me play this endlessly. You can also now deactivate pollution. Pollution was like a main or one of the big resources in the modern age, and if you basically had too much pollution, the game would end because, well, the planet was dead, right? Like in real life. But the problem was that sometimes pollution was growing too quickly. Like you build like 2 or 3 buildings which create a little bit of pollution, and the world was on the brink of collapse. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't really make sense. So they made like a lot of balance changes to pollution, but now you can also just deactivate pollution if you don't want that. They did major overhauls to the civilizations in the game because some of them were just too good and some of them were pretty weak. And they made some changes there. They made changes to how many points you have to collect to get into the next era and so on and so forth. Like they made so many good changes. If you stop playing Humankind because you felt like it wasn't there yet, it is now. And if you've never played this game and you really, really like games like Civilization, you should check it out now. Like it's now that good. Again, this is an honorary mentioning because when it released, it wasn't in that state. And I'm pretty fed up with games becoming good after a year or so. But I always had the feeling that Humankind was already good when it came out, but it wasn't in the state it should have been. So, if you haven't yet, check this game out. It's also on Game Pass if you don't want to buy it. But now it's a great game. Like, it is worth to go back to. And Mimi, again, thank you so much for the support. I really, really do appreciate that. Thank you. And hey, Mr. Tobbs, thank you also very much for the banner. Like, yeah, thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate it. But yeah, those were my top 5 games of 2021. And with Humankind as the honorary mentioning, because they did really good at that. And that was 2021. And as I said, I have to say, we had some tough games this year. Like, I don't really put into words how tough it was for me to find like the top 5 good games. You know? Like you have years where I'm looking at my list of the top 5 games and I have 10 games on that list. And I'm like, 10 games? Oh, shoot. I have to cut that down. Like, I cannot like just use that. And this year, I was looking at my list and I was like, I have only 3 games so far. Shoot. What am I doing here? Right? And so it was actually kind of tough. It was the opposite with finding shitty games. Yeah. Finding shitty games. And we had a lot of them. Like, we had a lot of them. Games which came out where you were just like, really? That's what you want to release? Like Battlefield 2042 is one of those games, right? Like even like good old GTA, or well, good old Call of Duty with Vanguard, right? Like we had all some tough games. And yes, Battlefield was definitely on top of the list of like shittiest games of this year. But you know what? No. There was another game. Actually, it was 3 games which were just not great. And you probably guessed it already. It was the GTA Trilogy Definitive Edition. And man, how you can screw up the game like you did with this one and then still say, no, we want to release it anyways, is just absolutely beyond me. It's so many bugs, glitches, performance issues. The game sometimes looks shittier than it did before, and you are literally asking yourself, how was this possible? Like, how did they greenlit this? And to make something clear, if you don't know, this is not the old GTA engine they were using. They completely used a new engine for this, and well, it's not a new engine, it's the Unreal Engine. They used the Unreal Engine for it, and it sometimes looks worse. than the old game. Like, they literally didn't put any effort into this. Which is remarkable to me, because keep in mind, this is owned by Take-Two, right? Like, Rockstar Games is owned by Take-Two. GTA is owned by Take-Two. In the same year, just a few months before that, we got an amazing remaster, and that was Mafia Definitive Edition. If you remember that. Which is also owned by Take-Two. How can you release Mafia Definitive Edition, which, amazing by the way, if you have never played the original Mafia and you were like, that doesn't look too good anymore, play Mafia Definitive Edition. It is amazing. Like, that is a really, 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 really good remaster / remake-esque thingy. You should totally do it. And then this game is coming out, and you are like, GTA is such a huge IP. How are you managing to completely run this against the wall, where Mafia, which is unfortunately not as big as GTA, well, it's also not entirely an open world game, got a better remaster than this one? And it is really unfortunate. It is really, really unfortunate that basically Mafia got the better remaster, more attention, which is a much, much smaller franchise in comparison to this mega franchise. It's baffling to me. It's absolutely baffling to me how this could have happened. And again, yes, I'm aware this remaster was not made by Rockstar. This was made by a third party, I think a Chinese studios, if I'm not completely wrong. Don't quote me on that. It was made by a third party studio. It's again, this game should have never released the trilogy. They shouldn't have. Like, it's a mess. And then they also removed the original games from all the stores. And they were like, hey, so if you want to play the old games, forget it. Also, we will send out cease and desist letters to modders who have graphically enhanced the GTA games, like the trilogy, for years, because we want that people are buying our shitty remaster. I was like, Take-Two, are you nuts? I'm sorry, have you lost your mind? That you were removing the old games from the store, by the way, they reinstated them. You can now buy the old games again. But that you literally removed them, okay, that's one thing. It's shitty. Don't do that. But that's one thing. But sending out cease and desist letters to countless modders who enhanced your game for years just so they stop doing it, and that people basically have to buy the remasters because they wouldn't do it because the mods were for free. Like, that is super shitty. Like, that's dog shit shitty. And because of that, I present to you the brownish turd hill for the shittiest game of 2021. Congratulations, Take-Two. You earned that one. Now, that was the shittiest game of the year. Now we have to talk about the shittiest company of 2021. And, I cannot believe how many companies were just fighting over that achievement. I cannot believe it. Like, every time you were looking at the companies this year, you were like, ooh, that's kind of shitty. That's kind of shitty, isn't it? And then another company somewhere around the world is like, hold my beer. And like it was tough. I was torn to who am I giving that list to? And let me tell you the company I will not give it to, but they were really close, especially because in the last 2 weeks they threw another contender into the ring, and that was Ubisoft. Ubisoft was actually for a long time on my list, and especially in the last 2 weeks with the NFT bullshit, they were this close to take spot number 1 again. Like, and they don't stop. They just gave an interview yesterday where they were like, yeah, do you not remove NFTs? Nah, we are standing by our principles. I was like, which principles? The one to make money? Like, to be a dickhead? Again, Ubisoft was this close. This close. Like, I could have rolled a dice on which of the 2 companies I want on my list this year, and both companies would have been fine. But in this case, the brownish turd molehill for the shittiest company of 2021 is going without question to Activision Blizzard. Congratulations, ActiBliz. You managed to win this. You absolutely nailed it. I don't know even where to begin with how this company just threw himself off the cliff. And when they survived, barely, they were like, again. This is the only time, by the way, you will see a Blizzard game on my channel. Like, I have completely stopped to cover Activision Blizzard games. I have completely stopped to cover, like, their announcements. And I will continue to do so. And yes, it pains me, because I heard Diablo 2 Resurrected was actually a pretty good game this year. Because this was actually a remaster, which is good. But if you want to know how shitty Activision Blizzard is, you just have to look what they have done to the company who has made this remaster. So the company who has done this wasn't their first remaster, they also did the remasters for Tony Hawk and Crash Bandicoot and then some other games. And they've been doing remasters for quite some time. And as a thank you, Activision Blizzard closed them down and moved the development team into Blizzard, and now they are damned to do Blizzard/Activision's bidding whenever it comes to, like, the games they want them to do. And it's like, wow, okay, this is how you thank them? Like, you're just closing them down, and then you eating up or gobble up the developers to fill the ranks of the Blizzard developers who left the company over the year. Yeah, I call that pretty shitty, to say the least. Like, that's really shitty. But it's not just that. Like, you probably have heard it. The sexual misconduct which have been exposed at Activision and Blizzard, and the culture which has festered in that company for years. And not only that, but the reaction of the executives. When all of this came forth, they were like, that's not true, never happened, bullshit, the people who are saying this are all liars, and nothing like this ever happened to me, and how dare they to say this. And unbelievable. Not just denying it, but also saying that the people who came forward are liars and are the problem here is just so vile that I don't really have words for that. And then, of course, Bobby Kotick, who has been in charge at the company for over 20 years, is now pretending that he could fix it. And by the way, this is the perfect moment where I like to mention that, yes, Bobby Kotick was in the black book of Epstein. Apparently, Mr. Bobby Kotick was a frequent visitor on the Pedo Island. But hey, I'm pretty sure he will now figure out the sexual misconduct which is going on in its company. And it's just like, this dude has no right to like be in charge of Activision Blizzard. He should have been ousted years ago. And if you're wondering why didn't he got ousted, well, the board of directors had basically explained that to their shareholders. They released a press release where they were talking about all the achievements, yada yada, like a lot of PR bullshit. And then at the end of it, there was literally the sentence saying, please keep in mind who made you a lot of money in the last 20 years, who gave you a lot of return rate in the last 20 years. It was us, and we will continue to do so. That was literally a sentence. I kid you not. I made a news about it because it's just like, that's your point? Like, you have literally people who broke the law, and your point is, but we made you a lot of money? I cannot eat that much as I want to puke at that point. Like, ugh. It churns my stomach. Yeah, that's what the mob does. A lot of money. Now, at least the mob still has some morals here and there. Activision Blizzard doesn't even have that. I think that's unfair to the mob. They have some morals. Activision Blizzard as a company has not. Definitely not Bobby Kotick. But yeah, to make this clear again, like it is true, Bobby Kotick is in the black book of Epstein's black book of visitors of his little pedo island. He's in there with full name, email address, private phone number, and all the good stuff. I was like, yay! But that alone should be enough. It isn't. So to go back to the company, like how they treated the people and how, like just how they don't really care is outstanding. Like I just can't. I absolutely can't. So, yeah, Activision Blizzard, congratulations. You earned that on how you treat your workers. And I know that some people always say, yeah, but look, man, sure, that's tough, but I don't really care. I'm just here to play video games. You know, I just want to play some games. I want to have fun. My life is tough as it is as well. I have also to fight with a lot of like issues at work, and I just want to come home and play some video games. I'm sorry, I cannot care for this as well. Well, I could now argue that, well, try to feel a little bit more for your other people, for the other humans around you. But sure, let's look at it from the angle of why you should care. And the answer is, it slowly sips into your games. Keep in mind, it's not machines which are making your games. It's humans. And those humans have feelings. And heck, Making video games is still an art form. It is art. And how well do you think an artist is working when they're getting sexually harassed, frightened, threatened, and also feel like they're not getting the money they deserve every day? How do you think the artist is doing their job there? How well? Well, if 2021 wasn't a perfect example, then I don't know what was. So many games released in a shitty state because the people who work behind the games had huge issues. Crunch, neck-breaking timelines, people in charge who have no clue what they're doing, sexual misconduct, threats, low pay, and you felt that. There were tons of games which had those issues and which didn't release in the state they could have been released. I mean, look at Blizzard yourself. Overwatch 2. That game should have been out years ago at this point. Diablo 4 lost a lot of people and is probably not doing so well. They closed or shut down a lot of other projects. Like, there is enough evidence to show that when people have those problems at their workplace, that they're not really doing a good job. And I can totally understand that. So, congrats Activision Blizzard for the brownish turd hill of the shittiest company of 2021. Honorable mention of Ubisoft. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if in about a year we will sit here and I will give the same award to Ubisoft next year, because they were that close. And I have the feeling they will not do better. So, with that said, we are done with the awards. Yes. And hey, Pirate King. How are you doing, Pirate? Good to see you. Yes, Texas has won a lot. But yeah, those were the awards for 2021. We had the top 5 awards, which again, if you have missed it, was Hitman 3, Subnautica Below Zero, Chivalry 2, Psychonauts 2, and Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. And then we gave away the 2 Turd Hill awards we had to give away. And now we would normally be done here, but there is one last award I want to give away. And this is because I want to show positivity. Like, you know, we always have some tough topics here in the channel and in the show, and we are focusing on a lot of, like, the bad aspects. You know, like pointing out the dead body behind the curtain. And what I want to do this year is I want to point out a company who has been doing a lot for gaming, who has been really trying to give the gamers the good things, who are putting a lot of effort into their games, and who unmistakably, when you're looking at companies, have been doing quite good. Now, in the end, of course, they're a company, right? And I always say don't trust that company. And it's kind of funny because I still hold a pretty huge grudge against that company in my life. And I think that will never change. But I want to give out one last Golden Molehill Award to one of the best gaming companies in 2021, and that is Microsoft, and in this case, Xbox. They have been doing a phenomenal job in not just releasing a diverse portfolio of a lot of different games, but all of those games were released in a good state. Like, they were really in a good state when they came out. Sure, Halo needed some small patches with performance, but now it's running great, at least on my end. And a lot of people said that they had very good experiences with it. Forza, they're doing a lot for diversity and inclusion. Like, when you are looking at what Microsoft is doing when it comes to help people out who have disabilities when it comes to gaming. Like, as you know, I'm partially colorblind. And for me, they're doing a lot in that regard. They have like a lot of colorblind options and things which are helping me to see better what is going on the screen. It's a minor thing. Like, it's nothing in comparison to what other people have to go through. Like, if you didn't know, in Forza Horizon 5, there is even an interpreter for deaf people. So people who cannot hear, right, and who want to get like some voice acting out of it, sure, they can have the subtitles, but they are also offering you an interpreter who is actually doing sign language. And they are then doing the sign language to the things which are spoken on the screen, which is fantastic. Sure, it probably did cost them extra money, and that's probably the reason why a lot of like companies would not do that. It's like, oh, but do we get back the money? But it's just like such an amazing thing to offer, you know? And they're giving you like a lot of options. They're giving you even like Psychonauts has like, I think Psychonauts had like a cheat mode you could activate, which would then make the game like super easy for you, and you can just enjoy the story, especially if you're not very good with the jumping puzzles, right? They're bringing back dead genres like Age of Empires 4. Like, Age of Empires was dead for many, many years, and they're now bringing it back. Like, Microsoft really tried to bring inclusion and diversity to the gaming industry. They are also now relatively aggressive against toxic players in the community. They're trying to better that. They are listening to their community. I know that there are some people who will point out that, but have you seen the Halo Pass? Like, you know, the season pass for Halo multiplayer? And I'm like, yeah. And have you seen how quickly Microsoft started to have a conversation with the community and started to change things for the community? They have reacted super quickly. And they have immediately listened to the people. And they have asked them, like, okay, what do you want out of it? What do you think is the problem we should change here? And then they implemented those changes in days. Like, sure, it would have been better if we didn't have that problem at the beginning, right? Like, it's always good to not even have those issues. But it is also important to see how a company is reacting when you have issues. Like, how do you act on it? How do you react to those issues? And that's what Microsoft did. They listened to the community, and they acted super quickly. And now the only people which are still complaining about that they have to play Halo to fill out the battle pass are basically the people who are not even playing Halo. Like, seriously. I have now multiple people who play Halo multiplayer in a casual mode, and even they say now, wow, I'm done with the battle pass. I don't know how that happened, but I'm done now with the battle pass. Like not even a month. Like I don't know what the people are complaining about. And I'm playing the game maybe an hour per day. That's like, yeah, okay. So like Microsoft is really trying to make gaming a better place. And I think that's needed nowadays. Too many companies are just in here for a quick buck. And at least Microsoft is like, sure, we want to make money in the end. Like, we want that sweet money, and getting plus points or bonus points with the gaming community will probably make us more money in the end. I get it. Like, their business, right? But they are not trying to be shady about it. Like, I mean, look at Ubisoft. Wonderful example of it again. Like, Ubisoft could decide to make more money by winning the gaming community over. What they decided to do is to make some more money, or hopefully more money, by scamming people over with NFTs. You know? And I think that's such a huge difference. And where even Phil Spencer already said, like, yeah, NFTs, I mean, sure, from a technical perspective, they could be good. But unfortunately, there's so many shady figures and businesses behind NFTs right now that he's just like, nah, not touching that. Like, not gonna happen. I have to say, in general, like, Phil Spencer is a gamer, and that helps so much to make decisions. Like, we have far too many people in suits now in charge of gaming companies who have never played a video game in their life. Not a single one of them. And they only look at the money aspect, but not at the product they are selling. And I said it before, like, the easiest thing for the video game industry you should remember is you are there to entertain people. And if you're not entertaining people, then you will not make any money. And I have the feeling more and more executives are forgetting exactly that. You are there to create entertainment, not just to make money. The money comes through the entertainment. And unfortunately, as I said, more and more people, more and more executives are forgetting about exactly that. So, yeah. One last golden molehill goes to Microsoft / Xbox. Even though they killed Mixer last year. And I will never forget that. And I will begrudge them for all eternity. Yup. That will never change. Now, we are done with this part. What do we do, folks? We still have some stuff to go through. We have to talk about the games I'm looking forward to in 2022. We will have to talk about that. And then we also have to talk about content creation. YouTube, Trovo, and all the streaming. So we have that coming up in just a few. I will take a super quick bio break here. Yes, we take a break. I have to go to the toilet and all that. And then I will be back. If you are watching this on YouTube, the second part will be up there. You will find a link in the video description. And then you can watch the second part right there. But with that said, we are done here with the first part and with the awards. I hope you enjoyed it very much. And we will definitely be back with that next year in 2022. And then hopefully much more banger games I have to choose from. But if you enjoyed this show so far, I would appreciate if you might leave a like if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you want to see more gaming news, reaction videos, and tips and tricks for new games, and this award show, then I would appreciate if you might leave a subscription. And if you're wondering who are you actually when it comes to video games, Mo, pretty simple. I have been working in the gaming industry for over 11 years. I started out as a games journalist, then community manager. I did work as a consultant and PR person for some video games. And then I moved into content creation, and I'm now doing all of this for over 11 years. So I have been going around when it comes to the industry and the gaming industry as a whole. But with that said, if you also want to ever catch us live, you can do so on trovo.live/chaosmo, and you can find us there from Monday to Friday, starting at 9 a.m. ET. Keep in mind though, I will be on the vacation till January 3rd, 2022. With that said, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the second part. Bye bye.